Good evening. My name is Deirdre Cross, and I'm the Assistant Director for Public Programs here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program entitled Comrade Sisters, Women of the Black Panther Party. Let's just sit with that for a little bit. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to have an audience this esteemed and panelists this wonderful all together. It's an honor to welcome everyone to tonight's discussion of Stephen Shames's enlightening photographic chronicle of the hard and beneficial work of the Black Panther Party in the Bay Area during the 1960s and 70s. This book prompts us to reflect on the community building, social justice-focused effort of the Black Panther Party, where 6 out of every 10 members were women, and who did the life-changing work of providing meals, education, and health care wherever it was needed. We are so pleased to welcome tonight's panelists, including Lynn French, Executive Director of Hope in a Home, Ericka Huggins, activist, writer, and educator, Reverend Cheryl Dawson, prisoner rights activist, and attorney Hazel Mack, who will be interviewed by Angela Tate, NMAAHC Women's History Curator, where we will learn about the paths that all of them have taken forward in their lives since the beginning of the party. As we begin this evening, Stephen Shames will provide an overview of Comrade Sisters, whose photographs have been shown all evening. Photographer and writer Stephen Shames, who has images in some of this country's most prestigious collections, including this museum, has written over 15 books, including one with Bobby Seale entitled Power to the People, The World of the Black Panthers, which was one of the first discussions ever presented in this theater. We are so pleased to welcome him back tonight. Please join me in a warm welcome for all of the panelists and Stephen Shames, who will start us off with his impressive group of comrades.
Hey, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're really pleased to be here. I'm really proud of this book. This is the first photography book that features the women of the Black Panther Party. And as most of you know, especially the women have been active and doing things since day one, but they're often overlooked. And the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, everyone knows the men who were leaders of that movement, but we didn't always realize that the women were the backbone of the Black Panther Party. 2/3 of the Black Panthers were women. I was a student at Berkeley when I first became involved with the Black Panther Party. And I started at Berkeley in 1966, the year after the free speech movement, and actually in 65, the year after the free speech movement. And the Panthers were always on the campus, and I started taking pictures originally of police brutality on the campus. I'm so happy that police brutality is no longer an issue in this country. But back, yeah, exactly. And I brought some pictures by the Panther office, and Chairman Bobby Seale liked my pictures and asked if he could use them in the paper, and that's how I got involved in the party. And I'm really so proud to have known the Panthers and also these incredible women who really, I know when you see the pictures, hopefully they'll start scrolling the pictures, whoever's in charge. There you go. What to me is really was so incredible about photographing the women is just to see the love of the community, the love of the children, and their dedication. You know, being a Panther wasn't a 9-to-5 job. It was a total of 24/7 jobs. And women would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and collect food, make breakfast for the children. And as you know, the Panther breakfast program preceded Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, giving food to children in the schools. The United States was not feeding children in the schools until the Panthers shamed them into it. The same with free medical care. The Panthers had free medical clinics, and that's something which, as we all know, still hasn't been achieved in this country. We're still fighting to get medical care for every citizen in this country. A safe program. And again, the women were leading these programs and running these programs. In the Panther Party, the women were equal to the men. And the Panthers, at the time, the Panthers, in my opinion, were the most progressive organization in terms of treating women as equals and giving women leadership roles in the party, and which is obviously is a big issue today. So really, I think I'll turn it over. I was supposed to speak for 15 minutes, but actually I've said most of what you need to hear. I mean, this is an incredible organization. They did incredible things, and the legacy of the Panthers, especially the Panther women, lives on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for that wonderful introduction to your work, as well as the legacy and the story and the presence of these 4 women here on the stage. So I'm the Women's History Curator here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and I'm so honored to be the moderator for this panel. Before we begin, I do want to kind of set the tone and say our campaign, led by our director, Kevin Young, is living history and also living history, and that is what the 4 of you represent. And I kind of want to move in the spirit of these images that we see behind us and also in the books tend to be static. We tend to think that is it, but you all are here. You all have survived. You have passed on the legacy to your children, to the people in your community, and when you are forming your questions, keep that in mind, not just thinking about that 1960s, 1970s moment. Think about what their legacy has achieved over the past 40 to 50 years, and the fact that we are in this room with them, we can still draw knowledge and wisdom from them for living in this time period. So thank you. But if we do go a little back in time, please introduce yourself with your name and how you want everyone to think about you as you answer the questions. But let's go back. Let's go back to this time period of these photographs. And can you describe who you were at this time? And also, what lessons did you hope to learn when you encountered the Black Panther Party and its mission? Anyone can jump in.
Is Okay, so am I talking about who I was then? Yes. I was a young lady around 17 years old who had come up in a very segregated but safe environment due to the sacrifices of my parents. They pretty much, up until that age, I was isolated from white America. We lived in segregated Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I was not so much abreast aware of my world until about that age. By that time, they had killed Malcolm, killed King, killed Medgar, and each revelation opened my eyes, bombed little girls in churches, and my little cocoon that I lived in was just opening up, and I looked out into a world, and at that time in my life, it was not a place I wanted to go into, and I was blessed to encounter members of the Black Panther Party, which gave me a purpose and a direction when I was feeling very forlorn and very frightened, probably pretty much like some of our children do today, when they look out into the world and see the horror of this, what has occurred over 400 years to our people, and that we've been living in this 400-year slow Holocaust that keeps repeating itself over and over. I was that child. And what the party did for me was to allow me opportunities to coming to myself, coming to my being, to understand history, to learn, and to act, because it provided a platform on which we could bring whatever we brought to the table, and we had an opportunity to act on those things. It taught me courage and gave me, without arrogance, it taught me love and understanding, because you cannot serve the people and not love them, not and be a true servant. So that was the person who I was, and that's what the party did for me in 1968, 69. Hazel Mack.
Hi, I'm Lynn French, and I'm a DC homegirl. I grew up in a relatively sheltered environment in Washington, D.C., when it was still a very much segregated city with a lot of limitations. And at the point that I finished high school, it seemed to me that the only options for a Black woman was to either be a school teacher, or to clean someone's house, or to marry somebody who could take care of you in style. And none of those three things addressed how I envisioned myself. I wanted to be someone for myself. And so after a lot of little puttering around, going to demonstrations and what have you, I decided to move to Chicago, Illinois. I moved there in 1966 at the tail end of the Chicago Freedom Movement. And the Black Power movement was at its height. There were a lot of events going on. Stokely Carmichael, as he was called then, he didn't become Kwame Ture till later, was always on the circuit giving speeches, exciting speeches, and firing people's imaginations. There were a lot of little efforts that we had in different neighborhoods. But then, one day, I picked up the New York Times, and I saw this article about these folks in California who had gone to the State House in Sacramento with shotguns to protest what was happening in the community, talking about police brutality and the limitations being implemented on them. I said, that's who I want to be. And at the same time, there was a magazine that we all used to love to read, Ramparts magazine, that was sort of a left-wing popular magazine that Eldridge Cleaver was an editor of. And he wrote this still remembered article about Huey Newton and the Black Panther Party. And I won't use his exact language, but he described Huey Newton as the baddest to ever set foot in the pages of history. And so my imagination was just fired up. I was a student at Roosevelt University in Chicago, and we started a Black student union, and that's when people, they didn't exist everywhere like they do now. We were one of the first. And we decided we were gonna have a conference and invite the Black students from the different community colleges and they were called junior colleges then, and colleges in Chicago, and just have an event. And so we put it all together, and Charles Hamilton, who co-authored Black Power with Stokely Carmichael, was teaching there then, and he was our advisor. And we said, we need a speaker. And we were trying to figure out who was within our reach, who we could get to speak. And one of our classmates, named Bill Hampton, said, I have a brother named Fred who's a pretty good speaker. So we invited Fred Hampton to be our speaker. And that is when Bobby Rush actually founded the chapter in Chicago, but Fred was like his first recruit. And there was not an office yet or anything. They came to Roosevelt, and they just had me from there. It just fired up my imagination. They talked about the 10-point program, and the first point of the 10-point program is the one that spoke most to me. We want freedom. We want the power to determine our own destiny. And it's like, that's what I want. And within the structure of the party, women were on equal footing with men. You could be a leader, you could be a follower, you could contribute your ideas. Everybody, now it wasn't a perfect world, but that was our ideal, and that just spoke to me. In terms of when you were talking about the love and the relationships, I feel that the quote from Che Guevara saying, a revolutionary is someone who has great love for their people. And I think that's what motivated us all. We worked hard. We're all really inspired by Fred Hampton, who was just a remarkable person. And really, you know, the chapter started in late '68, and by December 1969, he was assassinated by the FBI and the Chicago police. So a lot happened. It seems like a lifetime of work. But within just those months, there was so much that happened, and it still inspires us all. So that's what drew me to the party. That's my story.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Dawson, and I'm going to tell a different story. I'm going to tell you about a small, insignificant colored girl who lived in West Berkeley. Someone who had a family that was pretty typical, although I didn't really realize it at the time. A family that survived slavery but still had all the hard wiring from the plantation. A family that was struggling. And for me, growing up in West Berkeley at that time, colorism, racism, everything you can think of, poverty was living in my house, followed me to school every day, and followed me home. From the time that I was a young girl, and when I raised my hand in elementary school and could never be called upon, when I raised my hand and all the folks who were lighter than me were given the opportunity to give the answer, or the folks who didn't look like me at all, I began to realize that something was wrong. Something was very wrong. But in the heart of a small girl, that wrongness says, it's you. And so that's what I believed growing up, that it was me. And at the same time, I saw the social workers coming in and out of my community. And I asked someone, what are they doing here? What are they supposed to be doing? And they said, oh, some auntie said, oh, they're here to help. And so that landed in an empty pit in my soul. And I decided by the time I was in the 5th grade that I was going to be a social worker because I wanted to help. I wanted to help. Fast forward to Cal State Hayward, being some of the first black folks to hit Hayward, 4-year institution. They didn't want us there, so I was in the same closet that I had lived in all the time. And I also watched the folks that did look like me on campus become occupied with bid whist and hearts and dominoes and sorority. And for me, that didn't fit. I felt kind of afloat by myself. And then one day, someone came to me and said, hey, I think I know what you would like. Why don't you come with me to Oakland City College and hear this brother speak? And I said, well, who is he? He said, it's Bobby Seale. Why don't you come and check him out? And so I did, my brothers and sisters, and that was a life changer for me. I promptly went back to Cal State and quit and grabbed my baby and went to the Black Panther Party in Berkeley and began to serve my people. To love our people is to serve our people. There can be no revolution without love. I had a deep, abiding, joyful love for my people. And it broke my heart that the Oakland police were killing us at random. And when they came to my brother and beat him up, he was partially paralyzed to begin with, and they beat him up for nothing, just passed down the street, saw him on the porch and went up there and did what they wanted to, and left him on the street corner like a piece of garbage. I became afraid. I knew my history by that time. I left the church by that time. I returned because I'm a minister now, but that's another story. So I left the church at that time because I was afraid they were going to kill us all. And so when I became a member of the party, my focus was to save my people, to save my people. And I didn't really realize the extent to which I loved my people. I just knew I had to serve them. And the opportunity was presented to me to take care of the elders in my community. Of course, I never saw myself as becoming an elder, so I didn't know anything about all the aches and pains they had that I have today. That's the benefit of living long. But I knew that Miss Joy needed her Meals on Wheels. I knew that Mr. Pete needed his medicine. I knew that Miss Rosie was waiting for her niece. I knew that Mr. Booker needed his medicine. And when we had roll call in the evening in the Panther headquarters, I recited the needs of every elder in my neighborhood. And I recited where they were. Oh, the Meals on Wheels is coming. Miss Pete, her nephew, came to see about it. I knew what they needed. And I knew that I loved them. They were dear to me. And so were those babies that were filing in and out of there in the morning. The ones I had the opportunity to serve. The ones I could make sure they had extra syrup on their pancakes. And when they got through, I could wash their little chocolate faces off. And I could put some Vaseline, because that's the ash protector. That's the ash protector, universal ash protector. So I had to put that on their little chocolate faces and then give them a kiss and send them off and tell them, you're mighty today. I don't care what comes against you, you are mighty. You are the future kings and queens of our people. Hold your head up and remember who you are. That was my love affair with the Panther Party. And I'll stop now so that Sister Ericka can speak. It's a long story. It's a beautiful story. It's a story of love and survival.
Is your heart touched? I mean, and I know these women, and I listen to them, and I just feel so full that the only way it can express is through tears of joy, that you are alive and well and thriving and here to talk about your lives and tell the truth about it. I'm thanking you, each of you. Really and truly. And Stephen, thank you for asking me to come and be a co-author of the book Comrade Sisters. It is an honor. My name is Ericka Huggins, and I too grew up in DC. In Southeast, near the shrimp boat. That's right. And I grew up in a family where I was the one who asked a lot of questions. I could see when I would walk to the neighborhood carryout, I could see me and my sister. I'm 3 years older than her, so I was the big sister. That the police would stop and dragging people out off the street, just walking down the street with nothing in their hands. It's like, I go home, Mama, what's wrong with them? Because my mother was very big on telling us, you go out there and you act like you got some home training. And I asked her, did they have any home training? Why? But she gave me an education in her own terms, being raised near Raleigh in North Carolina. She said, it's not accidental, sugar. It's the way it is. And I said, well, what happened? I was so little when I started asking those questions. And she answered me without all those fancy words we use now. And I'm so glad she did, because it wasn't fancy. It was just the truth. She said, it was slavery. I said, what is that? And she said, people work for nothing. And I asked her, well, does that mean that white people have black people doing chores? Because my mother would have us do chores. She said, no, sugar, not like chores. They didn't own their own lives. Babies were born slaves. Why am I saying this? Because there's a movement today to eradicate the truth of history, and it really breaks my heart. Anyway, I asked more and more questions. I wanted to understand, didn't have any language for what I was seeing, that when I went to Northwest, especially in the wintertime, to the big, beautiful department stores with the Christmas everything in the windows. It wasn't like in Southeast. And the people had good winter coats and boots. And I asked my mother, Mama, why don't we have that? Why in the projects across the street are the people with no heat? Now I understand I was asking for what is the structure? What's the scaffolding that created all of this? I'm glad my mother didn't talk to me like that, because I would have rolled my eyes. But I understand now how I was thinking about it. There must be something bigger than black and white that keeps it in place. And I know you know what I'm talking about. I know you do. It would be different if the structures were different. So that little girl became a teenager, and at 15, I went to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. A most remarkable, pivotal day in my life. I can still see myself there with what I thought was millions of people. This tall, skinny girl, just out there by herself against her parents' wishes. My mother said, something could happen to you. And I said, well, I'm going anyway, and you can punish me when I get back. I hated to upset my mother, but I had to go. I told her I was being called like some of the men and women in the church. I had to be there that day. And I'm so glad that I did. And on the stage, what I saw was Rosa Parks and Dorothy Height and Lena Horne, and it would take me a while, but I could name so many people, as well as Martin and all of the wonderful civil rights leaders. And I was so touched by all the people that gathered there today. I'd never seen that many Black people gathered for anything. Not church, not a concert, not nothing. I had never seen anything like this. And I was so struck by the peace and the love. You know how you can walk into a room or a place and just feel love? It was like that everywhere. Even the babies were quiet. And then I noticed something else in this inquisitive mind of mine. None of the women spoke. I found out later by reading the biography, The Rebellious Life of Miss Rosa Parks, that the women were uninvited to speak. But I knew then something had been said to those women, or they would have been speaking. And at that moment, I had that thought about the women not speaking. Lena Horne, who was a vocalist, an actress, and an activist, that's why I liked her, rushed to the podium on the stage, and she sung 2 syllables. Freedom. And she sung it such that it blanketed the air and landed in our ears. And when it entered my heart, something happened for me. I'd always wanted to do something to make a change. And this promise arose from my heart. I'll serve people for the rest of my life. I got back on the city buses, went home after the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. My mother was pissed, but she was glad I was in one piece. I didn't tell her about what had happened. I didn't want anybody to step on it. That vow that came from so deep. And there is that deep place inside of us, which will make a little bit more sense later as I talk about my life. I always knew there was a depth to every human being. And I felt it that day. And so then I started looking for what it was I could do to serve. And I went to one of the historical Black colleges, and it's striking how when you mentioned Charles Hamilton and Stokely Carmichael, I was at Lincoln University outside of Philly. And Charles Hamilton and Stokely Carmichael were writing the book, Black Power. A little tiny book. It's out of print, but you can find it. And we didn't know we were making history when they called us in and said, y'all come and sit on Tuesday or Wednesday night, and we'll read a chapter, and we want your feedback. I didn't know we were making history, or that this book would change the inner and outer landscapes of the United States. Black Power. And it wasn't about fists or rallies. It was about reclaiming the power that is naturally ours by birth. It's human power. So I read the very same Ramparts magazine at Lincoln University, and my new friend, who later became my husband, John Huggins, and I read it together. And when I read that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, that was its original name, was conceived to bring freedom to all poor and oppressed people, that really struck me. All poor, Black folks talking about all poor and oppressed people. That was an international perspective. And John and I decided, like Cheryl, to quit school. Don't quit school. And we drove across the country to free Huey Newton, who had been wrongfully accused of killing a police officer. And we ended up in Los Angeles because we ran out of gas money. We were on our way to Oakland. And that's where we landed. And that is also where John and I became pregnant, and my daughter's somewhere here in this crowd. And that is also where, on January 17, 1969, John Jerome Huggins Jr. was assassinated. But there's a story that says they were assassinated because of a rival black organization. That's a lie. We're here to tell the truth. There's something called the FBI's counterintelligence program that orchestrated those things, and I know for sure in my heart and my mind, in my spirit, that was orchestrated. It couldn't have happened the way that it did if it wasn't. When somebody says the word beloved, I think of John. When somebody says the word beloved, I think of Alprentice Bunchy Carter, who was killed with him that day. But there were 28 of us killed, as if human lives are just dispensable. But the vow kept me moving forward. I didn't stop because of that vow to serve people for the rest of my life. And then later I was arrested, incarcerated, and awaiting trial in solitary. John had already been killed. My daughter, who was 4 months old by then, 3 weeks old at the time of John's death, and 4 or 5 months old at the time I was incarcerated, for a conspiracy with the intent to commit murder. A man was murdered. I didn't murder him. I was on trial with Bobby Seale. He did not murder him. It was orchestrated by the FBI's counterintelligence program. And so to save my little baby daughter from experiencing all of the despair and the sadness and the pain and the grief that I was feeling, I decided to ask one of our lawyers. Black Panther Party had always had lawyers, and they worked pretty much for free. And you know what that means, Hazel. You were a lawyer. Yeah, it's called pro bono. It means I'm doing this because I love you, basically. And I asked one of the lawyers for a book on meditation. I don't know why I asked him. Nobody told me to ask. Nobody was in my ear. We can think for ourselves, can't we? I just knew that I needed something that would help me to stay, the word that, balanced, so that I could face all the challenges coming. And Charlie Gary, a famous lawyer, look him up someday, brought me a book on meditation and yoga. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but the little book said, after you stretch your body, sit still a while and breathe. And I knew how to sit, and I knew how to breathe. And suddenly I was able to be with my daughter for that 1 hour every Saturday. Isn't that cruel? 1 hour. And not dump how I was feeling on her or Elizabeth Huggins, John's mother, who had lost her only son. And then, day after day after day, I became more and more calm and resilient, and it helped me through the trial. And it is this practice, which seems so simple, has helped me to this day. And I'll stop there. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think that is the perfect time for everyone to contemplate the kinds of questions they would like to ask. I think a couple of our ushers are going to pass around notepads and pens for you to ask questions for our Q&A session. And while you do that, we can move on to a question that I have. You know, of course I prepared and pre-circulated questions, but I am really I'm just really fascinated by how love is a word that echoes throughout the book and echoes throughout all of your reminiscences. And I would love for you to explain and describe and to feel like what is this love?
Sure. Okay. I'm going to do this. Sisters, do I have your permission? I have to do it, thank you, with your permission, because there's a fire burning in my soul. The fire is raging right now. It's making me tremble, making my voice shake, because it is love from the bottom of my feet to the tip of my hair. Each strand on my hair, each strand on my head is filled with this fire, tingling, burning, wishing that I could communicate, that I could drop a basket of this love in each lap in this room, that you would take this love with you for the people, that you would use this as your personal altar, that you would draw from it when you need it, that you would drink from it as a cup that is eternally full, that can be refreshed according to your desire, so that you can return to the battlefield of your naming, and you can lead the people. You may serve the people. You may inspire the people through that love, through that fire in your belly. It never goes out. Mine has not winked out for a day. I have continued to serve Black women every chance I get. I have continued to serve our community every moment that I have. And I thank my higher power that I live still, that I have a reasonable command of my mental acuity, that I can stand and walk and run and shout and dance, all in the name of freedom, all in the name of Black women rising, all in the name of folks who don't have enough, that need more. Come and get it. Take this love home with you. Do what you can so that we can claim what is ours, our equity, our love for one another, our power for our children and for your grandchildren. That is what I have to say. Thank you for giving me a chance.
If I may, I want to talk about love in the context of the wonderful gift God gave to me, which was my mother, Lee Faye Mack, who we lost in 2019. As I was coming up as that little girl in the projects in Winston-Salem, I was recounting this to someone recently. My mom, I never, to this day, she taught me all I knew and all I've come to know in a lot of ways, even how to die. Mom was the epitome. Anyone who knows her would know that she was the epitome of love. And she taught me that through her behavior, not through talking, but what she did. As we grew up in Happy Hill Garden in Winston-Salem, towards the end of the month, when the food ran out, we were one of the few families. I had a father in my house, bless his holy name, my dad. And I would know that it was the end of the month because Mom would pull out these big pots, and we'd come home from school, and she would have cooked a big pot of pinto beans and biscuits because I knew she was going to serve the neighborhood. Anyone who couldn't eat could eat at our house. And as I grew up, I understood through her behavior what love really was, how you behaved on a daily basis. We didn't have a lot, but whatever we had was available to others. It was never a matter of hoarding. It was, even when I questioned her sometimes, I would say, Mom, she'd give away everything, it seemed to me, when I was young. That's how you see it through a child's eye. I would say, Mom, we don't have that to give. And she'd say, well, she would remind us, but we have. And as long as you give, she said, God will always provide. And she taught us that. And that was the foundation on which I came to the Panther Party. We were churchgoers in the South, that's the Bible Belt. Everybody Black went to church. We praised God. We understood that God is God, even in the midst of our trials and even in the midst of the oppression under which we lived on a daily basis. but we always understood who controlled the universe. So as I came into the party, I brought that with me. So it aligned with my ultimate belief. And so I often say, Mama taught me the real meaning of Christ and Christianity, not some of this stuff we see today, what people call being a Christian as they hate on each other. But the party taught me service, how to actually practice that Christianity, how to practice that love. And as I grew into who I was, although many times I found myself angry and facing a world that was, seemed like it was impenetrable at times, I never lost that basic foundation that I learned as a child and that was built upon as we came into the party, which gave me an opportunity. It really saved my life in a lot of ways because it gave me focus and it gave me hope and understanding that we could create what we wanted with what we had. We always started with whatever we have, and I practiced that. It allowed me to be a part of starting a school that has existed for 25 years in my neighborhood. It has allowed, it influenced my choice of careers. When I finished law school, I decided to work for legal services because I could work for the poor. When I retired 6 years ago, it influenced the business. I decided I would do a small business, a community, which has really become a community center in which we could provide a space, and that's what I wanted, a space where people in the community could come to and find peace, a refuge from this cruelty that unfortunately we see every day that our community still labors under. And the only way out, as I see it, is that we have to understand as Black people and people who are oppressed that we are who we have, and we have to start with us and build out from there. And so I join you, sister. I invite everyone to understand that even though the portrayal of the Black Panther Party was always with guns, that's not the work that we did on a daily basis. The work that we did on a daily basis was selling newspaper to raise money to do the programs that really address the needs of the people around us. One other thing, in Winston-Salem, we started one of the only free ambulance programs in the country. And we did that because at the end, the people, the brothers and sisters who did that, did it because as we moved out of segregation, the only Black hospital in our neighborhood was closed, and people were dying because they couldn't get transportation to the hospital. People would show up, the ambulances would show up and demand either payment or proof of how you could pay. And frankly, many people could not pay. And so we started a free ambulance program. The survival programs of the party grew out of needs that were right around us. And we pulled on the resources that we had, starting with ourselves, and then reaching out to others, to those who joined us on different levels. We had many people who supported us in the community who wanted to be known. Some did and some did not. But it was because of that that we were able to bring forth those programs and give hope to the community.
We wanted at the beginning to do this, and I'm so grateful I remembered. And thank you for passing the cards around so you can ask a question. Are there women of the Black Panther Party in this audience? And if so, would you please stand? And are there sons and daughters of members of the Black Panther Party in this room, would you please stand? Our grandchildren as well. And are there men of the Black Panther Party who did not stand when we asked for the women? So just keep standing. Thank you. Thank you very much. This book is not about a few women or a few people. There were hundreds and hundreds of us. So thank you.
Well, we have to wrap up, but the questions that I received from the audience are kind of around these similar themes and also speak to you asking who is here and rise. So how did you take care of yourself collectively and individually through these stressful moments? And also, what are some things that you can impart to those of us today who are, current events are very stressful, and sometimes people are like, I don't know what to do, how to respond, how to care for myself in these moments. So how did you all care for yourselves and then care for the collective?
Well, less emphasis on how I care for myself. I've just had a fortunate life. As you said about your mother, you give and it comes back to you. But in my old age, I run a program called Hope and a Home here in Washington, D.C. We're based in Columbia Heights, but we serve the whole city. And we are a program for low-income homeless families. We own properties, apartments, where people can come and live, families, you have to be in a family, come and live for 3 years. And we work with the families, with the parents, we work with them. They're largely people who have been not well served by the DC public schools. We help people find a vocation or a career. We get people training. We help people address their personal and professional barriers to success and independence. But more importantly, our goal is their children. And we have an education program. Every family has an education plan. And we work with the families here. I don't know how other cities, well, you're all from DC. It used to be that you had a neighborhood school that you just signed up for, but because of the evolution of charter schools, it's not that simple anymore. So they have these complicated lotteries, and there's this whole crapshoot and where you get your child placed. So we counsel families to find the most appropriate setting for their children. If their children have special needs, and many children have special needs and need an individual education program, we are structured to service them with that. We have children who had IEPs who go to college. One young woman I'm thinking of could barely read. She went to college. She became fluent in Spanish. She spent her junior year abroad. She joined the Peace Corps. Our goal with the individual education plans is to help young people move beyond those limitations and learn how to survive. We also are committed to helping each child with a post-secondary education. Most of our children at this point go to college. Those who don't want to go to college, we help them find a certification or an area. Right now, we're sending 25 kids to college. We encourage them, because they're from here, we really encourage them not to stay here for college. We encourage them to go away to college and see how the rest of the world lives. We also have a Send a Kid to Camp program every summer where we send all of our children to camp, and at least part of the summer is spent at a sleepaway camp so that they can, again, have an experience away from the block they live on. And now in this era of computers, these children remain in touch with their friends that they meet from all these different places. They can email back and forth. But our ultimate goal is to strengthen those children and to break the cycle of poverty. I have not yet met a family where, despite what horrible things they've experienced, that those parents, those primarily mothers, didn't love their children. They just have been dealt a rough hand. And our goal is to help people move past that, provide a safe home in which they can nurture their children, and for those children to step out, get a post-secondary education, and find success and independence. So that's what I do to help people.
I'm going to expand just a little bit on what Sister French has said. I think most of the people up here you'll find we continued in our lives based, and a lot of what we learned in the Panther Party influenced what we did in the rest of our lives. 27 years ago, this year we actually started a school under charter schools in North Carolina. And what makes our school different is that we specifically started the school and got a permission for our school based on serving the needs of the most needy in our community. And for 25 years, we've served the southeastern part of the city, Black and Hispanic students, graduated students, sent them off to college. They're now coming back now. And so I think what you'll find is that most people who, brothers and sisters, who worked in the Panther Party were influenced by what we did then, and it continued in our lives, no matter what our paths. And that's one of the great gifts of the party.
I'll let you finish. I'll let you finish. I want to say that when we carry this love forward, it's like a bucket of rose petals. It's delicate, but its scent is strong and mighty. So I spent my time inside the jails and the prisons serving the women. That's right. Because it was the bottom of the bottom. And I felt like that's where I lived. When I looked in their eyes, I didn't see them as felons or criminals or despicable ones. I saw myself. I saw myself alone, by myself, and at the bottom. And I was hell-bound and determined to lift them up, to bring light into that jail, into any prison into which I set foot. It wasn't, I say I, but it's really not I. It's about the spirit that lives in all of us to serve our people. I don't care whether it's in the school or in the prisons or on the line or on the corner. It's the same love that lifts us. And when we share that love, when they see that love, when the people feel that love, they will follow. They will follow. And they will do what you show them to do. And they will learn the trick to love themselves in spite of being under fire. So I loved them, and I worked with them for so long and so hard. I fought that sheriff's department for so long, and when I retired, they turned around and named a day after me. I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand it. See, you all chased me around like a slave in a cotton field for all of these years, trying to bring something to these women so they would not come back and be a seat in your chair so you could collect money off of them and they could leave unchanged and unrelented. No, I want them not to come back. I want them to join me on the other side. And so that's the work that I have done and that I continue to do in the cities where I live. I just wanted to tell you that we can all take a piece of this pie, go home and put it to work. And the one thing I want to say right now is what we can do is have some resistance. And here's one easy trick. I'm going to say it. You know that N word that they keep throwing around in the music industry and in the movies and on the street corners? You know that nasty N word, that last word that so many of our people heard while they were being dismembered, while they were being roasted over a fire, while they were being hung from a tree. There is no reviving or sanitation of that word. That word is always death. It is spiritual death, it is moral death, it is physical death. And when we can, we ought to stand against it. So when I go into the beauty supply store and I hear something that has the N-word, I march straight to the front desk. Where is your manager? Because you are playing something that passes for music, which is offensive to me and to my ancestors. Please turn it off. And I tell the young people, oh, you want to get on the floor and shake it up and listen to them call you the B word and the N word? Let's reconsider. Take a piece of this pie.
I hope you're listening to Hazel and Lynn and Cheryl. I hope you take something home. And what I wanted to say is very simple. There's a beautiful documentary called The First Rainbow Coalition, which Fred Hampton, unlike a common story that says there was a politician who started the Rainbow Coalition, it was Fred Hampton. Because he said, why can't black folks and brown folks and white people work together? They could do it, and he did it. Because the Black Panther Party was all about coalition building, for real, putting aside petty ideological stuff or what you didn't want or like, and working together. But that's a long story. What I want to say is, in this documentary, a friend says, when asked, what can we do? It's so big. I mean, what can we do? He says, you go to your front door and you look in front of you. There's something for you to do. You turn to the left. There's something for you to do. You turn to the right. There's something for you to do. Behind you, there's something. Just do something. And that is how I've lived my life since the Black Panther Party didn't continue after 1982 in its physical sense, although it is reproduced all over the world, and these programs show up everywhere. The programs, the 60 community survival programs we've been talking about. But I pay attention to what's right in front of me. And I'm remembering back to when I heard how many black and brown people were dying of HIV/AIDS. And I applied for a job in San Francisco at the height of that pandemic and became a prevention education manager. I don't know what that word means, but someone who helped volunteers to understand what it means to serve. Hazel, because I learned in the Black Panther Party, serving is a way of being. And so I got to work with the most beautiful people who were being thrown away by society because people didn't understand the illness, the virus. Look where we are now. And I also worked in the project, the sister project that Cheryl started. Once you're incarcerated, you always want to go back and be of service. Not always, but you do think about it, and you do it. And my favorite place to go is in those places where the babies are being held, the 13 to 17-year-olds. They shouldn't be there. I'm an abolitionist. There shouldn't be prisons. We could do it different. And now I go wherever I'm asked to go, but with a focus on young people, because I think as now people say, I'm an elder. And they're right. I'm amazed I lived 75 years. I'm amazed. And every morning, as my uncle used to say, when I asked him how I was doing, I'm vertical. but I'm always looking for how I can serve. You can do that. It doesn't take much. There's a homeless village right by my house on the left and one on the right, and I can at least go and say hello to somebody. I cannot walk by a person on the street and act like they're not there. I can think of things that I can do to uplift a woman who I see who might, and Cheryl does this all the time, and I know that you all do it too in your center and in your work from what you've described. Say hello. Tell a woman how beautiful she is, how gorgeous, what her earrings might be. Lift somebody up. Don't think, what can I do is so big I can't do it. Just do something. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
All of the rest of the questions from the audience, virtually and in person, were like, what do we do? How do we start? And you all answered that expertly and also then some. And I'm really thinking about these moments and parts of my life where I can also exemplify that love. So thank you all for the lessons, for the legacy, and the love. We're wrapping up our panel, unfortunately, but the book signing is afterwards, and you have a chance to ask maybe a little bit more of your questions and your thoughts when you are getting your book. So thank you all, and I really appreciate you all for showing up and being here and being in community with us and taking time to go through this kind of ugly weather that was today to come here. Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies thank you, panelists. Thank you for a wonderful program. And for those of you in the audience, please do, if you would like a book, they'll be upstairs for sale and for inscription. They're already pre-signed. And I just ask that you stand where you are while we take the panelists off the stage and upstairs to prepare for the signing. So, thank you.